Hello, all. This is Lala. She's right here, but she's in cloaked. I'm sure she'll be here in a minute. And tonight we have Mark Turner with us. Mark and I have known each other for a while. We met each other mostly on Facebook, but anyway, we've gotten to know each other and have had some other interactions. Mark is an experiencer and a interesting person with lots of experiences and other things in his life. And I thought you guys would enjoy him, and Lala invited him, and Mark said yes. So there you go. It's the usual way to do it. So while Lala is still prepping, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, which is on X, Instagram, YouTube, and Rumble. So any of those places, go watch. Mark, tell us about you.
Cool. Hi. As Bob said, I'm Mark Turner. I live in North Carolina. I am a Navy veteran and experiencer. Work in IT as my day job, but I have really enjoyed speaking out about things that happened to me. So we'll discuss that, and I want to kind of look into like how do these things happen? How can we be better prepared for it, and maybe pull information out that is, like the traces that they leave behind, the electronic signals and things, and how do we make this more real? I guess would be kind of some fun stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to go to UFO Con 2025 in a couple of weekends, and my talk is the devices you can buy or get for free that you can put up near you and detect stuff that goes on when one of these things comes near you. And it happens to us like I was telling Mark before we started that on March the 20th, our alarm on Madar went off all day long. And we had a bunch of stuff on video, and just the way it is. So Mark knows, we know there are ways that you can assure yourself that stuff is physical and not between your ears. It can be between your ears, but it is also elsewhere. So, Mark, what's going on?
Well, I was mentioning earlier that I'd last seen an interesting light in the sky this past Saturday as I was standing on my back deck looking just nothing in particular in the sky, and this light appeared to be a star. Went from a stationary position to moving off to the right, which I guess was north in the sky, and then it faded out just like that. So that was something I'd seen actually a week or maybe 10 days before when I was looking at a different part of the sky. And both of these instances were about 2 hours after sunset. So I was actually on the phone, talking to my wife at the time, of the one that happened 10 days ago. And as I'm chatting away and just kind of looking at the sky, I just chuckled and stopped and said, "Oh, guess what? I've seen another UFO." And then I just carried on with my conversation because for people like me, you and me, Bob, the lights in the sky are kind of a common thing, and I always have to remind myself that there are a lot of people out there that would just find this so incredible and unbelievable that they probably wouldn't want to tell anybody that they'd seen it. And I just take that for granted.
I had 3 or 4 people ask me, had I ever gotten stuff in my telescope? And I've been taking a lot of pictures lately and putting them up. So I took a picture of the Leo triplet, 3 galaxies that are very close together and easily gotten in one frame on an astrophotography rig. Nice. So I had the astrophotography rig, and because I live in a light polluted area, the way you make it work is you take short pictures and you stack them on top of each other.
Stacking, right.
Stacking. So in the picture of about 25 subs had a curving streak in it that was way too light, way too dim to be an airplane. And it was moving all the way across the road with curvilinear paths, and it was slowing down, speeding up, and curving. And I went, wow, this is the first time I've caught something anomalous with my astrophotography rig. And it was amazing. So people, Mark and I are here to tell you, look up and don't stop looking up. and you will see stuff. Now, you need to learn to tell the difference between something anomalous and an airplane and a Starlink and a satellite. And the easiest way to avoid satellites is wait until an hour and a half after sunset or an hour and a half before sunrise,
Hmm.
because the sun illuminates satellites and reflects the light back to you. And you might think it's something when it's nothing but a satellite reflecting sunlight. You're in the dark, but the satellite's in the sun, and its solar panels typically act like a mirror.
Right. That's how a lot of people see the International Space Station when it flies over, because there's a
Oh,
certain time frame where you're going to be in the dark, but the ISS is still lit, and it comes sailing across, and then often it will go into the Earth's shadow as it's moving, and then vanish, and then a lot of people get confused, like, wait a second, that thing just disappeared, but it's still there. It's just you can't see it anymore. So,
yep, no more light for it to reflect because it went into the Earth's shadow.
yep.
Now, if you had a low light level camera, you could see it slowly fade into the Earth's umbra, but never mind. You get the
Hmm.
idea. It's I have a science camera, and it's really interesting to watch those things slowly but surely fade as it goes deeper and deeper into the shadow.
Hmm.
So, Mark, Lala's first question would be, and she'll be here in a minute, is what was your first major experience that really set you on this path?
Oh, well, I have to say that it was pretty impactful when I woke up and there was a small gray in my bedroom, which happened, as I mentioned earlier, 11 years ago this Friday. It was March 28th, 2014. I woke up completely awake in my bed. The room was dark, but there was somebody in the room with me. And I was paralyzed. I could move nothing but my eyes. My wife was sleeping next to me, and I could not wake her up to save my life. Couldn't make anything but a whimper when I tried to shout. And I basically just wanted to point over to that thing and say, "Look, they're real. There's one right here." But I couldn't wake her up, and I made this whimpering sound. Now, at that time, I'd had some practice with lucid dreaming, and if you're familiar with lucid dreaming, that gives you the ability to control your dreams. So normally, if I was having a nightmare or a dream that I got bored with, and it felt real, knowing lucid dreaming, I could change the complete direction or content of that dream and do something I wanted to do. Um, I wasn't able to change any of my situation that night. I could hear the echo of that whimper I made across the room, right, bouncing against the wall. So I knew that it had actually happened, but my wife could not wake her up. And normally she's a light sleeper, so that was very unusual. I saw something about 6 feet away from me in the dark, 3.5 feet tall, light bulb shaped head, big eyes, and it could read me like a book. It felt like that presence was super strong, and there was nothing I could do to hide or go anywhere. It was there, and it was just me and it, whatever it was. So
Were you terrorized or calm?
I was a lot braver the next morning when I wrote it down in my journal, but at the time I was like, I don't want to see this, and I got progressively more frightened when maybe it got closer to me. Um, I remember certain things that happened that night where they took me away and did some sort of procedure on me. But at that point, I was fairly relaxed until whatever they did hurt me. And then that snapped me out of my amnesia or hypnosis or whatever you want to call it. So they were doing something to my spine, and it was like I was in a dentist chair. And it was pretty much like I kind of halfway tuned out what was going on. It was almost like I'd had anesthesia. But then whatever they were doing sent searing pain down my lower back. And I mentally told them, "You're hurting me. Please stop," telepathically. And in hindsight, I'm not sure how I knew that they would be able to hear me, but that's what I did. And to their credit, they stopped what it was that they were doing. So in the morning, I woke up and I said, maybe that wasn't my first rodeo. How did I know that they would hear me? And also wanted to give them credit for actually stopping hurting me when I complained. But at that point, I went off on them. I remember telling them that they were supposed to be like the guardians of the universe, and instead they're stupid. How did they know that that wasn't going to hurt? My dog has more empathy than you do. I was pissed, and I let him have it. And also in hindsight, I was thinking, well, maybe that was a little harsh. I don't know. Every people get surgery, they go to the doctor, they go to the dentist. It's not always a pleasant experience, right? You might have some pain, but you know that overall it's for your own good. And I can't say for sure that whatever they did to me wasn't also for my own good. They always put me back in bed, and I think the reason why they often will adjust your memories of the situation is for your own good, to lessen the trauma that might actually take place, because this is a lot of stuff to handle. And I was walking around in a daze for several weeks afterwards going, yeah, I mean, I believed this kind of stuff before, but now I can't deny at all that that it's happening to me. And it definitely rocks your world,
Sorry, I'm late. Sorry, I take my son to the doctor.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
I'm
we have a
back.
sick one in the house, and she had to take care of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I hope he's feeling better. Hello.
He's better.
He's feeling better, but you still got to go to the doctor, make sure you can go to school tomorrow and get your pass, so it's not an unexcused that you get the drill.
I know the drill. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So as having a teenager is always fun.
Yes. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, so and then what are you doing now at home to do any kind of sensing, detection, recording, etc.? Anything?
Well, at the time of that particular incident, I had night vision cameras, SD quality, put around various spots of the house. I had an alarm system that I had turned on. Had a dog in the next room. None of that seemed to matter. Around that time frame, though, I would go back and I would look at the video, and I would see these orbs that would appear to be floating through the doors, through the windows, unopposed. Some nights it was well below freezing outside. So to me, that rules out any kind of insects, right? That are going to be flying around when it's 11 degrees Fahrenheit. And that tended to be a thing. And I believe that actually when I was taken that night, I was either taken through the wall or through the window, probably the window, I guess, if I recall. So I have upgraded some of my cameras. I need to get one of those Madar outfits, like you mentioned, but I did become very curious about some of the literature out there that talks about certain key signals that are associated with UFOs. And like you, I'm an amateur radio operator, so I'm fairly familiar with radio and bandwidth. And this is like a 2 gigahertz, I guess, signal. And I found various descriptions of what you should be looking for. But you've got the Madar there. Yeah, see? So that's something.
This is the RX 888 software defined radio.
Oh, an SDR, yeah.
I can tune it all over the place.
I love SDRs. Yeah, I've got several of them here at home. So none of them are quite high enough in range to pick up that particular signal. But I am very close to getting one of those myself, because I think that I think they're around quite a bit. Now, the way I normally detect them is that they will leave little clues, like a feeling of a presence around, very much like if you've ever gone any place haunted. There will be, actually, I think the last time they showed up physically, they actually knocked on the wall of my bedroom before they came to take me. Yes. So I'd like to think they're maybe learning a little bit about manners and customs. So yeah, there was one time, I think it was September 2021, where I was home alone. My wife was away. I was watching TV that night, and I was going to let the dogs out one last time before I went to bed. So I did that, and I was standing on the back deck, and I could hear rustling occurring on my deck in the dark, maybe, I don't know, 10 feet in front of me. But there was no breeze, so I don't think it was the leaves or anything. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Felt compelled to go to bed early. So I went to bed, and I was wearing a pulse oximeter at the time, because I had a little bit of sleep apnea, and I wanted to make sure all of my levels were right. And I was doing that religiously all the way up until that night, when for some reason I decided I wasn't going to wear it. Highly unusual. I had like a whole streak of nights that I was wearing it, but all of a sudden I decided I didn't want to wear it. So that's the night where I swear I heard 3 knocks on the wall above my bedroom before they showed up. And woke up the next morning, and I had the distinct feeling that something had been touching my lower leg, my right calf muscle especially. feeling of fingers on my calf muscle. And I got up and I took pictures, didn't really see anything unusual that happened there. But then a day or so later, a friend of mine reached out to me and said that they'd seen a video on Nextdoor, the neighborhood social media site that I need to see. And one of my neighbors that lives about a quarter of a mile away was outside his house about 11 o'clock and saw crazy lights above my house
Wow.
right about that time.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that was visual video proof that something weird was going on. And the interesting thing is, over the Christmas holidays, I was visiting one of my neighbors down the street, and she told me of a totally separate instance where she and her daughter were walking through the neighborhood and saw crazy lights above my house. I didn't even know what that particular incident was. So all of my neighbors are seeing weird things, and that's basically how I'm finding out about it now. But I'd love to get some electronic Madar SDR type of thing.
Oh yeah.
Help me clue me in.
Well, I mean, so sometimes you get stuff on camera and you can't say, don't know whether that's this or that. And if you see a bunch of electromagnetic and a bunch of other signals,
right, correlation
you can,
there, yeah.
Yeah, you can correlate and then go, and do the thing.
Yep.
So I was wondering what. So you're trying to upgrade your cameras now. Have you picked any out?
I'd like to get a Skycam, one of those 360 type of dome cameras that I could put on the roof.
Fisheye, you mean?
Yeah, fisheye type of thing.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of citizen science projects where you contribute that kind of thing in case there are meteors and stuff that are coming by. I've always thought that would be fun to add a little bit of information. But 4K low lux cameras, I think, would be very useful. And I would like to be able to get some in a stereo configuration so that I can get some idea of range, of depth.
Yeah. Have them feel cross field of fire, and you'll be able to locate them. The other thing is passive radar, using a software-defined radio. So if you have a large, strong television station near you, you can get serious returns from signals from that television station reflecting off the craft and coming to your receiver. And the thing that's once you realize how it works, it's kind of obvious. You know the exact location of the transmitting tower. You know from your own equipment the exact location of your receiving stuff. And so you can do the math to figure out, here it is, and it's moving across the sky. You get the angular velocity. The Doppler gives you the radial velocity. You can do it. It's just wonderful. And of course, the government hates us doing this passive radar because they don't want us detecting stealth aircraft.
Yes.
Okay. Did you make a copy of the video that the neighbor saw, or did the neighbor make a copy?
Yeah, I got a copy from the neighbor. Yes, I do have it.
What do they think of this? I mean,
well, I went and talked to him after the one who was a quarter mile away. I went and talked to him afterward, and I wanted to stand where he was standing to see, the angle and everything where he was at. And he was fairly convinced that it was some type of otherworldly lights. I mean, it was clearly crazy. You can hear him on the video just cursing up a storm because he doesn't know what he's looking at. So I agreed that it was probably a UFO. I never told him that, it happens to be over my house. I never mentioned that at all. But my neighbors down the street, who told me about the separate incident, I think that happened December 2021 in that area. It's about 3 months later. I was completely open and talking all about all of that and said, if you happen to see something like that again, make sure you let me know. They're very open-minded about it. Everybody I've talked with actually about any of this stuff has been very open-minded and welcoming. And the funny thing is, whenever you're willing to talk about the stuff that's happened to you, you will often get people sharing stories that they never wanted to share before or didn't know what to do. I'm actually reading Whitley Strieber's new book, The Fourth Mind.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a great book. And one thing he mentioned is about memory. It's towards the end of the book, how when people don't have some reference for something that happens to them, they don't have any place to put it in their memory, and it'll often get forgotten or ignored. And I think actually a lot of this phenomenon would fall into that category. If you got something like that that just is outside of any box that you've ever tried to put something in, right? What do you do with it? You either learn about it so you can file it away properly, or you're like, I don't have time for this. I want to live my life. I want to do something else.
Right.
And you forget it,
So I regularly, after visiting Chris Bledsoe, and I had a few experiences, I regularly would listen to people like Grant Cameron. And
Yes.
he would have these panels on, and they would say stuff, and something would trigger a memory.
Mhm.
And so I did not trust the memory.
Mhm.
So I went home or called and talked to my parents, my brothers, and friends, and they recalled what I had not recalled.
Mhm.
That was weird download experiences and
Yep.
missing time incidents and
Mhm.
all this other stuff. My mother finding me in the yard in a trance while I had been looking through my telescope at the sky and just forgot how long I had been out there. And I'd been out
Wow.
there for hours, and I felt like it'd been minutes. And
Wow.
that happened all through my childhood and
Hmm.
into adulthood, and after the major experience I had at 18.
Mhm.
I don't remember any more experiences except I had nonstop downloads
Mhm.
for the remainder of my career.
Yeah, they have been around me. I decided I wanted to learn remote viewing. I've always had like psychic abilities over time, and it's kind of an interesting chicken and egg question. Like, is that one of the reasons why they were interested in me, or is it that I do have these psychic abilities because of their interest in me, that they've sort of helped train me? But I took up remote viewing more or less as a hobby, I guess, back maybe 20 years ago or so. And during my training, I have felt them around, and they've been encouraging me to learn that and exercise my psychic abilities. And I've heard that from other experiencers too, that they are sort of getting pushed towards spreading their wings, I guess, psychically. So that is something I think indicates that they're sort of. Well, I've always thought they're investing in me somehow, and I think that's one way they're doing it, is they're just training me to use these abilities that I think everybody has.
Right.
You absolutely agree. I mean, look, this one over here is the one that had it since she was a child.
Mm-hmm.
Or talking to ghosts and having things walk through her house and sitting in her yard and seeing flying saucers, and her entire childhood was filled with this stuff. I don't remember any of my stuff.
My question is, you said from what you can recall, you went through the window.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about that? How's it happen? How do you think our bodies go through it? Things like that.
My theory, and I'm not going to talk about dynamic nuclear positioning or anything like that.
I have no fucking clue. So
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. But my theory is that there was some sort of field placed around me that unlocked my atoms from the atoms in the wall or the window or wherever I was going. Slightly different frequency or something, so to speak.
That's it exactly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. And here's an interesting tidbit from that night 11 years ago. I swear that as I was leaving or being led out of my house, that I looked at my clock radio to find out what time it was. And I'm guessing, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was about 1 o'clock. What was very interesting to me is that the digits on the LED display were flickering.
Oh my god.
And they don't flicker normally. And thinking back on that, I'm thinking either I was out of sync or the clock radio was out of sync. They normally flash at 50 hertz here in America with our US power system, but they appeared to be slowed down to me. So either they were slowed down or I was sped up somehow. Either way, I felt like I was a little bit out of sync.
Mm-hmm.
And passed through wherever.
You know why you're sitting on that chair and not going through it?
Oh, right, because of the electromagnetic, the electron fields, right? And the atoms.
The Fermi exclusion principle. Okay, so
Yeah.
if they change your quantum frequency,
Mm-hmm.
you can go right through it.
Right, because atoms are what, 99.999% empty space.
Almost completely void of all matter. You can
Mm-hmm.
go right through it if they change your state.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they can do that.
Yeah, I think that normally we're in resonance somehow with all the other atoms around us, and then that gets changed, and then all bets are off. You can pass right through things. So, in hindsight, I'm thinking, okay, doors were locked, alarm system, dog, wife, video cameras everywhere. There's no place on this planet where they couldn't come and take me, and that's something that's kind of sobering when you think about it. But at the other time, I'm like, yeah, they'll put me back like they always do.
Yeah. Good.
No, I've asked him a bunch. Go ahead.
I'm just asking because I experienced a couple of times when I would come back, I felt like I was being dropped in my bed. Did you ever wake up feeling like you were dropping in your bed or something weird when you came back?
Well, as a kid, I'd always, wake up with a lurch. Well, not always, several times. That was fairly common for me. And I don't know if that was a physical thing or not.
Mhm.
I don't think they've been that rough with me before for whatever reason. Maybe I've just been lucky. But I think that my wife would notice if I started to bounce, on the bed in the middle of the night. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't do it to me.
So I had a weird experience
Mhm.
recently where I was wearing my mask, which I wear every night to
Mhm.
block the light out so I could sleep. And I woke up and I was looking around the room without realizing I had my mask on. And I could see right through it. So I sat up and looked around because I saw other things in the room. And I was a little shaky, a little nervous, and I turned around and saw myself in the bed.
Wow, sounds like a
And
astral projection there.
I panicked and fell back into my body.
Mhm.
And these memories of me that happened to me all the time when I was a kid came rushing back. So apparently I can do it, and it takes discipline to do it with more regularity.
Yeah, and that's the theory I've always had about when I was a kid and had that happen to me is that the theory is that you realize that you are not in your body at that time and then awake with a jolt. So that's kind of, I think, what's explained that to me. I think I probably did that a lot more when I was a kid. There was an instance when I was about 7 years old, and here's an interesting story because I don't know if this is alien related or astral projection related or what. But I remember being about 7 years old, waking up at night and gliding up and down the stairway of my house where I lived.
Wow.
Real as anything. Um, Gravity didn't apply to me. And there were 3 individuals standing at the top of the landing watching me do this. So as I thought about it over the years, I couldn't decide if those were my siblings that were watching me there or were they alien presences. I tend now to lean more towards them being aliens that were watching me do this, but it was real as anything, and I still remember to this day. So if you ask me like how far back do my so-called alien experiences go, I'd have to say at least that age, about 7, because I think that was one of those.
That's interesting. It starts around 5, 6, 7 for
Mhm.
most people, which
Yep.
is interesting. Did you have a lot of paranormal things happen in your home growing up too?
Honestly, I did not, which is surprising considering I'm very tuned into things now. We lived in some houses that, I'd be able to feel a little bit of the energy of things in there, but there was never any kind of ghost or anything to let me, um, get a feel for stuff like that. It wasn't until I was probably in high school where I started to notice that I was very psychic. There was a time frame there in like my junior year of high school where I would have vivid dreams about things that were going to happen that day. And they were mundane things. They weren't like some kind of disaster or, any kind of an emotional scene, but it was just me going to class. Somebody would say something. That person would look very similar to somebody I know. I would jot all that down before I went to school. Then I would come back the next day and like, holy crap, this whole thing is here. This happened, and I had written it down. I still have those diaries.
Oh,
in my collection. So that made me start to realize that what we know about time and cause and effect and everything is really not how things actually work, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, isn't it? When it happens, you're like, okay, what the hell's going on right now? You know?
You can have a crisis. Honestly, you can have a nervous breakdown if you are too wedded in the idea of, you know, this can't happen. And when it actually does happen to you, what do? You know, you either question your sanity or you change your worldview, and that takes some time, you know. And fortunately, now there's the internet where, you know, people like us can get together and compare notes, and that's been hugely helpful for me as an experiencer because there's so many people out there who've had similar experiences, but everybody has a slightly different version. And when you put all those pieces together, you can really start to assemble the puzzle and get a better idea about what's going on. So it's really helpful to have the internet define your tribe nowadays. And growing
Yeah.
up as a kid, you know, I wouldn't have told this to anybody.
Right.
So, given our kind of current position, we hear from those who have had nothing but horrible experiences that are very angry and constantly playing it down, and they're angry at the entities and angry at our government for not telling us, all the way to this is all love and light. Everything you did, you made a plan. You agreed to all this before you ever got here. And so it's really interesting, the entire playing field of different sets of experiences. And this is a very complex set of phenomena, very complex.
It is, and I want to have sympathy for the people who have not had pleasant experiences. Being male, I sincerely doubt that I'm involved in any kind of hybridization program or breeding program or anything. Maybe I am. I don't know. I don't have any real thoughts about that. I've never actually been regressed on anything that's happened to me, but they have invested in my psychic ability. I think they were just wanting me to talk about this. I think they were not going to push me on it, but they were extraordinarily patient, and they wanted to see if I was going to be able to integrate this with my life, with my normal life. And
Same with us.
yeah, I
Same with
didn't
us.
I didn't know if that would work, honestly, to begin with. But as I mentioned, um, the more I talk about it, the more stories come out, and surprisingly, I think there's far more people that have this experience, and they probably don't even know it.
Right.
Well, the last time I saw a reasonable effort at estimating how many people had abduction experiences was John Mack and some others,
Mhm.
and they had it well over 1 million people and
Yes.
probably much higher.
Yes. Yep. And you can box that any way you want. If you know you go with whatever your perspective is and your experience is, you kind of some people call them angels. I know Chris Bledsoe calls them angels. When he initially said that, I was a little skeptical. It's like, I don't know if I would necessarily go that far. But at the same time, as I mentioned, they have invested in me, been kind to me. They stopped hurting me when I mentioned it was hurting. I've actually had I was gifted, honestly, with seeing one in broad daylight
What?
in here in North Carolina. Yes,
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, lay
absolutely.
it on us.
So September 2021 was when I woke up feeling the thing on my leg, as I mentioned, and then my neighbor got that crazy lights in the sky thing. December, 3 months later, I took my family to a cabin in Virginia, and we spent a weekend there visiting family. One of those nights that we were there, I had the impression that a number of kids, maybe 6 or 8 kids, had come through the park and knocked on the cabin door and wanted to come in. And there weren't any other kids in that park area. I knew that. So they came in the cabin. I knew that, went back to sleep, knowing that everybody here was safe, but they were in the cabin.
Oh my God.
So week or two later, this is a very interesting story. You'll like this from the science perspective too. my wife travels a lot for work, and she goes to various hotels to set up conferences. That's what she does. So, um, December 2021, she has to make a trip out to the North Carolina coast. And it's a beautiful day, and I was able to work from home that day. So I said, okay, why don't I just tag along, and I'll, work outside while you're talking with the hotel manager. So she said, fine. We're getting ready to go to leave, right? It's about a 2-hour drive, I think, from Raleigh to Wilmington, where actually it was Beaufort, North Carolina, we were going. And as usual, we're kind of running a little bit late. I'm in the kitchen, and I flip on the light switch in the kitchen, and I'm stunned because we have a set of can lights above our kitchen counter, and only 2 out of 5 of them turned on. And they're all wired together. And I know how electricity works. And I can't explain why when I flip the switch, only 2 out of 5 come on. So I'm sitting there flipping the switch on and off. My wife is yelling at me that we're going to be late. But I'm like, I just don't want the house to burn down while we're out of town, right? Had no idea what was going on. And sometimes I swear the lights would change position. Like a different can light would come on and a different one would be off. Have no idea what that was all about. So we drive out to Beaufort. She meets with the hotel manager. I'm sitting on the back porch of this beautiful resort hotel. People all around me at tables enjoying coffee and breakfast. Nice sunny day. I'm watching the Intercoastal Waterway in front of me, tapping away at my laptop, pretending to work. And out of the corner of my eye, 20 feet in front of me, I see a very strange looking woman. And she is being escorted down this boat ramp by, I guess, one of the hotel staff. He looked like a good old boy, well over 200 pounds, staff member that was just helping out this old lady. She was dressed in like a 1980s era bright pink jumpsuit, that you would see on Golden Girls or something like that. She had on really big, dark sunglasses that covered almost her entire face, right? Well down below her cheekbones. And she was wearing a bicycle helmet, but she didn't have a walker. She didn't have a scooter anywhere that I could see. And I looked at that picture in my mind later, and I said, I don't know if that was a human that I was looking at. And I sincerely doubt it was, actually, just based on how everything looked. I swear it was one of those tall grays. And I think based on the weird electrical stuff that was going on that day, they were determined to get my attention. That was a gift to me to see them out in public the way they were.
So Kat wants to know if you know Chris.
I do not. I've met Chris once briefly at a conference, but I've not hung out with him at all. No.
Yeah, he is a very gentle, kind man. I mean, I love him like a brother. So with him, I have suspended science. I don't do science with him. With him, I'm his friend.
Yep.
And quote, I believe in him.
Yep.
So that's not science.
I've seen very impressive videos from him with his cameras. So,
are you of Irish descent at all? A lot of people think, or Basque, the French and Spanish.
I am Irish. My great grandfather came over.
Are you? You don't have to answer this, but are you Rh negative blood type? Do you know?
No. O positive, like
But you're O.
A lot of people, yeah. Nothing fancy about that.
I don't know. A lot of O's get abducted, whether they're positive or negative, and a lot of Irish descents.
Yeah, I think the Irish thing is a bit intriguing. And I don't know of any other family members who have had any of these experiences. I've kind of shared a little bit, with my family, but not had anybody step up and say, "Oh yeah." But then again, not everybody's like me and wants to talk about everything.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, well, we agreed to just tell everything to everybody. Whatever happened, we just tell it. That was our agreement with them. When they ask us, were we willing?
Yep. I'm willing to talk about just about anything. So, because I think we're never going to get anywhere if people are cagey and don't want to share their stories,
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm totally off of caring about or waiting for or thinking it's actually going to happen for us to get government disclosure. I'm back to finding out our own data and our own truth.
Right, right. And I think that's probably the best approach. I think if you're waiting for some big like monumental change in like the government's position, I think that's sort of come and gone back in 2017 when they admitted that all that information from like the Tic Tac incident was legitimate. And in fact, I think they're still saying that there are things out there that still mystify them. So you got to read between the lines through a lot of this stuff, you know. And I served in the military. I know a little bit about some of the wiggle words that can be used to sort of um, get around various topics and maybe not answer questions truthfully. Like, for instance, when David Grush finally went to Congress and you got a lot of these hearings, I loved that they were talking about non-human intelligences and stressing that word. That's great. Even though it doesn't really roll off the tongue, that does not give Pentagon spokespeople the opportunity to use wiggle words and say, well, we don't have any extraterrestrials that we can point to. Well, nobody really knows that they're from another planet, right? You can't say that for sure. They could be interdimensional, as you know. They could be living right here on Earth.
Right.
My opinion, they probably are living here on Earth. So if you call them NHI, that would sort of be inclusive of just about anything. But if you hear them say, well, they're aliens or they're extraterrestrials, those are wiggle words because they can say that truthfully that, yeah, we don't know of anything from other planets. Because
I think that's the only people that are allowed to come out and talk is the ones that don't know what it is. They just know it's non-human. So the ones that are truly in the know, they know stuff that that they will never say, and so we're never going to learn it from them because they don't want to come out and tell.
Well, if you listen to certain people who are in the know, they'll drop little hints every now and then, and you're familiar with like the classified world. There's a concept that you've got various little bits of information that in themselves are harmless, completely unclassified, public, can be released or whatever. But if you put two or more of those together, sometimes you will get classified information, right? That reveals something. So you can put together these little bits and pieces of information that you hear from people that have gone far down the rabbit hole, far farther than I have or you have. And when you put them together, it paints a very interesting picture of things that you will probably never hear confirmed officially in our lifetimes. So there's a lot of stuff I am fairly convinced is going on that hasn't really been publicly released yet. So.
Oh my God, what? Can you talk about it?
Like the reverse engineering programs you hear a lot about in Congress. The reason that is continuing to go on is because they've been successful.
Oh. What do you think? Can you see?
Look, we sat out here on our deck and my little Scienix camera and I looked up at the sky and the triangle flew right over and went over to Aberdeen Proving Ground. I mean, we have our own vehicles.
Yeah, I am fully convinced that we do have our own craft. And some people will call this the secret space program. A lot of that gets thrown under the secret space program thing, but I'm convinced that they actually do work. So I've heard that enough that it is key. So one thing to think about now, if you had such a craft, theoretically, how would you use it? Like, where would you go with it?
Exactly.
Imagine, like, what would you do with it?
Well, and if you tell the adversary that it is real, then they're going to double down trying to get it for themselves. And then we're in a world where I could put something ugly in it, fly it over the top of whatever in less than a blink of an eye and obliterate it and be back home before they even knew what hit them.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why pilots like Ryan Graves and Dave Fravor and people have been very careful about what they talk about as far as the characteristics of the things that are seen. David Grush, I think, also mentioned this too. You don't want to point out holes in our surveillance system that could be exploited by foreign countries. I think the reason why we saw those balloons, Chinese spy balloons that were flying over the U.S. is because we have tuned up our radars to look at
Fast
smaller
moving objects.
topics. The
Fast
smaller,
moving.
well, those weren't necessarily fast moving, right?
No,
They
no,
might have
but
been
the
wind carried.
radars are tuned to look at fast moving objects.
Right. Yeah. We were totally focused on fighter jets or incoming missiles, and they have a certain flight profile, right? But these balloons would be filtered out in the old settings, right? Because they're like that. They got to be birds. They're certainly not missiles or planes. So we're just going to filter them out. Well, I don't think they're filtering them out anymore, and that's why a lot of them are still showing up on radar, which is great. We're finding things now that we wouldn't ordinarily find.
Yeah, but they had to spend real money rewriting code to pick them out and put them into a different bucket.
I'm sure. Yep. But the solid state radar that the Aegis radar system had back during the Tic Tac incident, where it can track 80,000 targets at once, from 80,000 feet up to the deck of the ocean. It's hard to argue when it sees stuff like that, and then it correlates with not only the pilot's visuals, but the radars at the fighter jets, the E-2C Hawkeyes that are flying around.
Can I tell you that was ancient technology, because
yes,
15 years after that, I added with my team artificial intelligence to operate that radar.
There you go.
And that was 10 years ago. I haven't even been able to keep up because I'm on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't even want to get an idea of what we can do now.
I'm sure. And it's great because the timing couldn't be better. We've got hypersonic missiles now that pose a threat where if you don't react instantly, you could be toast. The drone threats, obviously, that's a completely different flight profile than what we're used to, like an incoming missile. We can see those now, and now we can react to them. I think I just saw a test recently where Aegis class destroyer used a laser to disable a drone. So, I mean, that's great that's there. That's also going to, of course, show things that aren't drones and aren't human made that might also be flying around too. So it is going to be very interesting to see how many reports, and we probably won't see that, probably a lot of that will go through internal military channels when they report things, but I can almost guarantee that we're going to see a lot more things that don't fit into any of those buckets, because now we can't,
Yeah, the laser is the thing that's about to really take over almost all warfare, especially on the defensive side of it. Because especially, look, we have learned from the Ukraine-Russia war that we can't spend $1 million on a missile to take out $1,000 drone.
Yep.
We already knew it before, but we did not really take it serious until Ukraine showed us that the old ways of war are over and done with. They have obliterated the armored machinery that Russia had. They've wiped it out.
Yeah, it's very much a sea change, very much like the aircraft carrier in World War II. Things were never the same after that. So one thing that will come out of the Ukraine-Russia war is that it is totally rewriting the rules of warfare and the needs for defense and offense. And so, yeah, totally agree.
My point to constant detractors of that is our military not having to fight and lose men is directly benefiting from all the data that's being gathered in the field to modify our equipment. And furthermore, the equipment sales are hiring American factories and American workers to manufacture it. It kind of makes no sense.
Yeah.
if you think about it, because against our second most dangerous enemy, we now know exactly what their weaknesses are
Mhm.
because they've revealed them to us, and then we've learned how to strengthen ourselves against what's coming. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, so that has also played into some of the mystery that still revolves around like the military's response and the things that tend to be floating around. You know, like the New Jersey drone flap earlier. I was reading yesterday that Air Force generals, 4 stars, are still mystified at some of the things that have been having incursions over sensitive military bases. But the interesting part of that is that they appear to be evading all of the anti-drone countermeasures that were thrown at them.
Yeah.
So that's got to make you wonder, you know, how do they do that? They're obviously a different generation of some sort of flying aircraft, which to me, you know, I think, yeah, most people know how drones work. They've got some internal map or they're remotely controlled somehow. There are known ways to defeat them if you can find them. And these things that still seem to be flying around, these so-called drones around the military bases, don't seem to be responding to any of those countermeasures. So that's very interesting. We've upped our game in defeating these things, and yet they're still here. You know, that really makes you wonder.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff we saw around Langley and around Picatinny and other places, especially those all over the world, they're not drones.
Sure.
There are non-human intelligence operated craft flying all over the place.
Mhm.
Now,
Well, some people saw plasma balls.
yeah, plasma balls, etc. And I have a relative who I will not name for their privacy's sake that got a plasma ball in a video that morphed into one of those drones
Wow.
on video.
Wow.
Yeah, what can I say?
Did you see the things when I was looking up the plasma balls and all that stuff? People started getting videos of, you know, that movie that was it, The Terminator or whatever, where it was invisible, but you could still hear it move around. There was something in people's trees, and they could see an outline, what looked almost like a human, but it was that's all they could see. It's just an outline, and they were in trees while this was going on.
Yeah, a couple years ago there was that so-called crash out in like a Las Vegas neighborhood. This
Yeah.
Well, we now know how real that was because I believe George Knapp and his friends.
Yeah, George does his homework. I will absolutely say that. But that family said they saw some creature out there, and there was a screenshot I think that George shared um, of a semi-transparent, you know, humanoid shape that was there. And looking at that, I was like, yeah, that's looks very much like a almost invisible sort of thing. So that's part of it, you know. And when I was on my back porch and I heard rustling and didn't see anything, it was light enough that I would have noticed somebody standing there, but I can't say for sure that they're always visible. I definitely feel them around sometimes and know they're around when I can't see them.
So before I forget about it, I wanted to thank all the people who are watching tonight. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, but especially want to say hello to our many friends on X that are watching. We are finding that X is producing our largest audience by far, and I am very grateful that you people are showing up and watching. And Mark is a friend of mine and a very good guest. Mark, tell us what you've got going on in the near future.
Oh, I am actually going to try some C5 type stuff next month. And I don't recommend this to everybody. You don't want to open your door to everything that's out there. But if you set the right intention, and I obviously have a track record with some of these beings, I would expect that something is going to happen. So that'll be fun. So there's that, and just getting together and talking more, I guess, about this to various groups and people who are still interested in it. Like you said, you need to look up because there's stuff out there. I've seen lots of lights over Raleigh where I live, plasma balls, as you mentioned. They are definitely here. They are definitely engaging people. So I think that if you have the right mindset, it's like the psionics guys were saying when they talked about calling down what's his name, Baker, and everything, calling down these craft and retrieving them. Barber, thank you. Yeah. If you approach it with an open heart, I think that you will get responses, and I think that they are.
You can't be greedy and looking for a weapon or getting rich, because they are really not very kind.
Right. And I think they're here to show us that we're doing things the hard way, and reality doesn't work the way we think it does. And we've got abilities that we are not even using.
Are you going to any conferences or shows and other things where people can see you?
Yeah, well, I don't have anything set up, but I got started working on a presentation that I'll have in the can hopefully soon. So maybe in the fall something will happen. I think there's a conference in October I was told about that I'd like to go see, or maybe even talk at. And I'm also going to be working on a book about this too. There's a lot of
there you go.
stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you were in our friend in North Carolina's series as one episode where he interviewed you. Tell people what the name of that is and where they can see it.
It's called Encounters. It's filmed by my friend Bill Howard, and you can find it on Amazon Prime. The Tubi.com channel gives it to you for free. I think I'm episode 4, season 1. And for about an hour and a half, I talk about that in-person experience I had and a couple other things that's going on. So
he's a great guy. He's our Facebook friend, and he is a great guy and totally dedicated to doing this and doing it the hard way. He's doing it on his own, where he doesn't get owned by others. Yep. Well, everyone, I really want to thank Mark for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much.
It was very, very nice of you to show up and entertain our audience and tell them your stories. And I just feel like it's important for us to openly tell our stories so people can know they're not alone.
Absolutely.
And that these things are real and they're happening to all sorts of people. Everyone from people who wash dishes to people who sit in high-rise apartments and penthouse offices. It happens to everyone, scientists, Congress people, whatever. It happens to everybody. Mark, thank you very much for showing up. It was a great pleasure.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.